It wasn't racism because the lady was white and I'm white, but it was an ism. And it was the soft bigotry of low expectations. And I think it's a good way to illustrate the racism of a black woman named Rachel Scott, who interviewed President Trump, and the racism of a white woman named Hillary Clinton, who went around speaking with a fake black accent while she was imitating a black civil rights leader, and the racism of Kamala Harris, whose motorcade decided to stop at a record store because Kamala needed some records, some LPs. For the kids, those are, things that we used to play music on. And she needed to buy it from a black record store with photographers tracing her. I don't know if she's wearing her $65,000 necklace she wears when she poses in pictures asking for donations. So it wasn't racism in the grocery store, but it was an ism. And it can lead us into all of this, the soft bigotry of Cammie, Hillary, and ABC. We'll talk about this with the help of God Almighty. Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times through which God has decided we shall live. So the grocery store was a QFC. That's a Kroger store, like Fred Meyer. Same ownership, better store, in Seattle. It was in the South End in a neighborhood called Normandy Park. And I had my little girl with me. My daughter at the time was probably a toddler. And we were in the grocery store shopping, and she wanted to look at things, and I was letting her look at things and understanding that the shopping trip would take longer than it would normally take. And I was loving every second of it. I absolutely cherished my Saturdays with my daughter because I traveled so often for business. So there I am, and she's intermittently holding my hand. She has blonde hair, blue eyes, funny little girl, very, very gregarious and outgoing, would talk to people. She had a great sense of self-confidence at the time. That was damaged later. The world can do that. It's coming back, praise God. And as we were filling up the cart with food and talking about the food we were choosing and why we were choosing it, a woman came along to me, an older woman, now probably my age. This was 19 years ago, roughly. And this woman came along to me, here, let me help you. And I said, no, I'm fine. She goes, oh, but please, I know let me help. So I said, no, I'm really doing well. She said, well, it's just that your little girl has kind of wandered off a few times. And no, she's not wandered off. I've been right next to her. She's never been out. Well, just let me help. Here, at least I can. Is there anything I can do to help? So I reached into my pocket and I got out my car keys. And I handed her my car keys. I said, yeah, actually, we're going to be in the store for a little while. Then we're going to go to Starbucks. Would you mind taking my car to get it washed? She said, what? Pardon me? I said, I can tell you where it's at. It's the only Jaguar out there. It's an XJ10. It's the kind of bluish green one right there. If you could take that to get it washed, I'd really appreciate it, and just bring it back. We'll be at Starbucks for probably 45 minutes. So maybe there's the touchless place up the road. In fact, let me give you $5 or $10 for the tip for the guys. She didn't like that. Well, I didn't like the soft bigotry of low expectations that men somehow can't handle hanging out with their toddler, when in fact it was a source of joy for me. And I was a competent toddler father. Thank you very much. I think there's a lot of competent people who happen to be black who should ask themselves this question. How weak do the Democrats think you are? How weak-minded, how weak physically, how weak morally? Yeah, it maps back to the grocery store tale. It really, really does. This is a thing you cannot get in the grocery store, but it's something you need. If you went to the grocery store to get this, you'd end up getting fake versions of it. About 80% of Americans are short on magnesium in their bodies. So who cares? Your sleep cares. One of the first things to suffer when you're short on magnesium is your ability to go to sleep and stay asleep. But that's just sleep. Well, what about this? Anxiety. People who are short on magnesium get extra anxiety. How do I know that? Because one of the 600 body functions that is driven by or regulated by magnesium is the stress hormone cortisol. Too much cortisol equals too much stress. Oh, and by the way, too much cortisol also equals your body holding on to carbohydrates to store them as fat. That's fun. If you were in a grocery store trying to purchase magnesium supplements, you'd end up with one, maybe two versions of synthetic magnesium, because that's cheaper. On the other hand, there's Magnesium Breakthrough. It has 7 forms of magnesium, all of it organic, all of it are natural, full spectrum, in other words, so it can help you in all the full ways, including things like digestion, regularity, and we've already mentioned sleep and stress. And this isn't even available on the Bioptimizer's website. It's not available on Amazon. Don't bother Googling it. There's only one place for you to get a free bottle, one free bottle of Magnesium Breakthrough. Simple. Go to magbreakthrough.com/Todd-free. That's magbreakthrough.com/Todd-free. No questions asked. Free bottle. You try it. magbreakthrough.com/Todd-free. Rachel Scott is a black woman. She's a black woman who believes black politicians and black journalists shouldn't be criticized by white men, but only by black men? Or should they be criticized at all? Or are black men and politicians and female politicians who happen to be people of color, are they just generally too weak to bear up to any form of criticism?
Not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And
we've talked about this on the full-length program, and I want to delve into this here. If President Trump had pulled any punches, he would have thought black people are too weak to handle it. He doesn't think that. The fact that Donald Trump spoke to a largely black audience at the National Association of Black Journalists that way shows no racism. On the other hand, Rachel Scott. There was, in fact, a guy at Mar-a-Lago who is called the white supremacist. I believe she's referring to a guy named Nick Fuentes, if I'm not wrong. I don't know Nick Fuentes. I don't bother getting to know Nick Fuentes. What I do know is that Nick Fuentes was one of many, many people invited there. And as I've read the actual coverage of this, it wasn't even someone President Trump selected to be there. I can also tell you this. When you work in politics, you get all sorts of outreach. There was a guy back in the day who reached out to me. He had a massive, massive Twitter presence. It was massive. It was probably, as I figured out later, bot-driven, but it was in the millions. He was very successful early on in Twitter and social media. Ergo, I took a meeting with him. Of course, I was the chief digital strategist at the RNC. I wanted to get to know this guy. I invited him to some meetings. He had a tech background, a pretty solid tech background, a very solid tech background, and some money. So I got to know him a little bit. One day we had dinner in Texas, and that's when he started to talk to me about the mud people, blacks. And it's that point that I said, I'm out. I didn't know if it was a setup, if it was an undercover leftist journalist, if it was law enforcement, didn't know, or if this guy was for real. Turned out he was for real. He thought that way. When I figured that out, I walked away from him because I abhor racism. It's ungodly. God created all races of people, and it was good. It was just not good that man was alone. So God created male and female in his image. He created us. So Rachel Scott apparently thinks people like Ilhan Omar and Pramila Patel and others should be immune from criticism that President Trump would also give to white politicians, like he'd give to Mitt Romney, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz's wife in a famous instance. My question for people who vote and who happen to be black is, do you understand the degree to which the left firmly believes you need extra help? I mean, extra help. Like you're a Jerry's kid because of your race. There was an infamous case in the Seattle area most people are not aware of. The former CEO of the single greatest taxpayer theft method on the West Coast, maybe save the bullet train in California, Sound Transit, a so-called transit agency building light rail, which is really just an eminent domain machine passing money onto big donors, and a job protection scheme for people who couldn't get even near this in the private sector. The so-called CEO of that organization spoke at a public event in front of people at a dais, at a stage, on a stage, knowing it was being recorded. And to paraphrase, he said to people in the audience, please remember, your black colleagues need extra help at work, particularly, as I recall, with things like the copy machine. He wasn't fired. He was brought back to work at one of the highest paid positions in government. That's racism. It's racism when Kamala Harris finds herself in need of some LPs. Because, you know, she sits around listening to music on record all day. That's what Kamala does. So she has herself transported with photographers in tow to a record store that, hey, look, that record store is owned by a black man. And when she comes out, there's journalists asking her, what did you buy? This video came out on the day that the stock market went down 1,000 points for the first time in history. But Cammie's purchased herself some black music from a black record store owner. Because Kamala Harris says this is what the blacks want. The blacks want me twerking and purchasing black music. It's racism. Hillary Clinton deserves some benefit of the doubt here. She does. Because what she was actually doing in this clip was imitating a civil rights leader. But last time I checked, when a white person of wealth and privilege puts on a fake black accent, that's racism. That's pandering.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me.
I'm really sorry, but if she'd put on a fake redneck accent, would I be allowed to be offended by that? See, remember something about Hillary Clinton. She was named after Sir Edmund Hillary, the famous man who was the first, I think, to scale Everest, first white man. Except, when Hillary was born, he was an unknown grocery store clerk, not a famous climber. Remember this, Hillary Clinton's daughter, Chelsea, was in New York during 9/11, and Hillary Clinton panicked, seeking after her daughter, except she wasn't in New York. And Hillary knew that. Remember this. When they were landing in an Air Force plane once, Hillary was told to sit on a helmet from a military member. I think her daughter was in tow then as well because they were being attacked. But again, that never happened. Not once. Nor does Hillary Clinton like hot sauce that she said she carried in her purse. Racism comes in many forms. I think the worst form of racism is this. Let me help you, darling. After all, it's really difficult. Your toddler's running all over the place. Let me help you. Sure, go get my car washed. Maybe that's what black people should be saying to the Democrat Party. Hey, I got some things you can do for me, like some tasks around the house. Give that a try. Come and mow my lawn, fell the tree in the backyard. Or, I don't know, come and wash my car, Cammie. Lord, thank you for loving all the races. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind. Please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.